Have you ever heard that knowledge is a really great thing? And it's true, but it may sound like a cliche, but many people have also said that people don't really care what you know until they know how much you care about them. And compassion is a very biblical quality. It's allowing ourselves to put ourselves in the shoes of someone else, having some empathy, and wanting the best for them and to help them out in their situation. That's going to be a subject that we're going to explore today in this episode of the Audacious Faith Podcast. Welcome to episode 21 of the Audacious Faith Podcast, and I am excited as I usually am. I have a great guest here today, somebody that I respect very much. I've known him for about 10 years, actually. Somebody who I would trust as far as helping out my family in many areas of life. And that's really important, I think, because we want to be the type of people that others can trust and know that they're always looking out for the best for them. That's very much how he is. He's a family man. He's a man who does a lot of things in business. He's also a man of faith. And my guest today is Mr. Dean Sanderson. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Jay.
I appreciate you being here. And I want people to kind of get a little chance to get to know you a little bit better. So why don't we start off with, tell us a little bit about you, your family, and maybe your journey of how you came to faith.
Well, how long we have? I was just curious, but I'll give you the shorter version. I grew up in San Gabriel Valley. I grew up in Arcadia, so I know you guys are El Monte, so you're familiar with the area. And was the youngest of four, and I was. They always said the TV broke, and that's kind of how I came about because I was significantly younger. So my brothers were all older than me, and kind of had their lives and things like that. My mom and dad got divorced fairly young. My dad was a professional gambler, and that's what he did for a profession. And that is an interesting profession to live on, which is probably why there was a divorce involved. Okay. And my mom was kind of a bookkeeper type person, working for different jobs, trying to find work and business and things like that, raising the boys on her own pretty much. And so as far as my accounting, I always had kind of a gifting of numbers. I am not a good speller. I am not a good reader, but I can do math in my head. So I don't know what that means. But it kind of led me in relations to coming out of school, high school, going into college, taking classes that I liked, which was accounting classes and bowling. Bowled somewhat professionally for a little while, and did well. Yeah. And a good friend of mine that I had met had an open position for an accounts receivable type position at a company called, and I'll leave it out because they went out of business, but in Burbank. And back in, I don't know if you might remember, 1987, there was this minor stock market crash, and that literally took that business out. And the manager there, the general manager, was the wife of somebody who worked for a company called Variety, which is an entertainment trade paper that's still out there today. Sure. And it got me an opportunity to go interview with the controller. And it was a little scary because I kind of had some specialty knowledge, and the controller said, "Look, I want you to learn every desk. I want you to learn everything, how accounts receivable, how accounts payable, the billing for advertising, HR, everything that you could sit at anybody's desk if anybody's out sick." And it was a little scary because that was a lot, but I was young and eager and excited. And so that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. Again, I've been blessed to have things happen to me even before I was really a believer. Now, I've always believed, but there's a time when you really come to faith and you do an altar call and you realize you give your life to Christ. And that came a little later. But it gave me some great general knowledge of how business works. And so I was with Variety for almost 20 years. And went through my own personal divorce, lost both my parents separately over about a 2-year period. Just went through some things and some challenges, and then I kind of came to, I think in life you get a few crossroads, and they gave me an opportunity to relocate to Newton, Massachusetts. Oh, wow. Which is a pretty good relocation if you're used to Southern California. Yeah. And I used to go there for events quarterly, and I've been to seen the big green monster, and they took me to Cheers and all the Boston stuff, and they were trying to get me to do it and kind of take over the accounting division of the major company, which is Connors. Yeah. And was going through a divorce, and I thought about it, but I believe in my kids, and I just couldn't do it. And so basically it was kind of one of those things. You either take it or your position is eliminated.
Right.
And so I'm a very stable type person, so I wasn't excited about that, but I wasn't going to move away from my kids. So found a couple other jobs and got hooked up with another job that I worked at for about 10 years. And it was an interesting company. And there's an evolution and growth to things. You can't stay the same. And so actually it was a copier company that was going paperless. How do you do that? I get into scanning and document management and things like that. I became a certified document management specialist.
Okay.
But in 2008, a lot of things were going on.
Crazy.
So luckily, I sat down with somebody who did work in financial services back in 2005. That was a training appointment, and I thought I knew what we were doing, but I had no clue, really didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And they put us on a position to get our finances together. And so when that happened, my wife was actually working for the firm. I started working with her and put us in a position in 2010 where I actually retired my wife and told her we have a disabled son, stay home, take care of Ryan, take care of the house. I got this. And a decade later, as you know, I'm still in the financial services. We got our broker's promotion in 2014, and they kind of said you can brand yourself. And I'm not going to go much into financial services and accounting and things like that, but I didn't like what it was doing to people. And so I created the Life Builder organization, Life Builder Dean on Instagram, if I'm allowed to plug.
Sure you are. Go ahead.
Life Builder Dean on Instagram, helping people spiritually, physically, financially, relationally, intellectually, just trying to serve and make a difference. And so we came to the Lord. I came to the Lord actually because of the company we had. There was somebody who was in the business for just long enough to bring me to Christ.
Nice.
It's pretty awesome. And God's got a path that you don't always understand and you don't know why. I'm just going to give you the whole story on a couple other things because you asked about how I came to the Lord. So
Go for it.
It was through a gentleman by the name of Steve Miller who's out there in Texas, and he's actually got a world's record for the strongest hands, and he ran a men's group and iron sharpening iron, and it just kind of caught my curiosity. He was running a church out of a hotel, and it really was our son Ryan, who is disabled, and we were actually looking for a way and a place where people would be nice to him.
Yeah.
And we felt the church was that, and really that's why we started going to church. And then we, of course, connected up, and then there was a Sunday where, like I said, there was an altar call, and I realized I needed more.
Right.
And so that was it, though, and it was good. He ended up kind of relocating, doing stuff, and the church got another pastor, and me and him kind of had a falling out in regards to some of the messages he was giving. I wasn't in alignment with, and kind of left the church. And then there was a local church in our hometown that was having a believe it or not, they call it the Norco Nightmare, and it's just weird for a church to put on a Halloween event. But it was something for them to do an event where there was a maze and stuff, and there were scary things. But the scary stuff they were doing was situations with drug abuse, scary things with obviously just abuse with families and fighting, and it all ended in the main sanctuary with Jesus being lifted on the cross.
Nice.
And there were several people that gave their lives to Christ that year, and it kind of caught my attention. And then they had an opportunity. I work in financial services a lot, and I have a lot of families in a lot of different situations, and they were having a toy drive. And so they said, if you know a family who needs toys, can't afford, like really in a bad situation, let us know. And so I put like 4 names in there for people that I knew were going through some stuff. And when I showed up, I was expecting a toy because they're like, age, boy, girl, age, and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And literally there was 4 garbage bags full of toys for each family.
Okay.
And I said, I really like this church. And so we started going to this church, and the pastor, I'm an introvert, but I'm a relationship guy. I want to know who's leading me. And so I remember going there, and I said, well, I got to go meet the pastor, and I was just talking to you about him. I'm going to see if I can get him on your show.
That'd be awesome.
And I said, I want to have lunch with him, and my wife's like, who does that? Who's got to go? Like, you just brand new. Like, I need to know if he's going to be my spiritual father, or if I'm going to be coming, I need to know what his story is.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to lunch, and I said, what's your story? And he went through that, and then it was about 2 years later when the church was going through kind of a transition. And the pastor asked my wife, he goes, do you, and I think Dean's kind of like an account, like I don't go around telling people, but, word gets out, like, I think your husband like has an accounting background or some, knows numbers and stuff. Do you think he would help, do you think he would be willing to help with the church on the administrative side? And my wife had a great response. She goes, Dean has time to do whatever he wants to do, so you'll have to ask him, right? I had no idea where God was taking that, but that was the way that God really brought me in even further. And as you know, my walk's going further. I actually get my pastoral credentials. I've been on mission trips to Africa. I've done a lot of stuff since then, and it's really a part of who we are. And that's, prior to that, I never thought of doing any of that stuff.
Sure.
But God's got a plan, and He won't do it the way you think you would expect.
Exactly.
But he will do whatever he needs to do to move his kingdom forward, that's a really long.
That's all right.
Quick opening, huh?
No problem. In fact, you set up kind of because we've had, like I said earlier, you're episode 21, and in almost every single one of these episodes, we found that through people's parts of their life, God doesn't waste anything.
No.
He takes things into different aspects, experiences, like some of what you were just sharing, and he puts it all together for what's next. It was all important then, but it's also for what's next. And what you're sharing right there just falls right in line with a lot of what we've really already seen. Now let me ask you this, because you were already known before God really grabbed hold of your life. I mean, even when I met you at first, I remember you were one of the first persons I met in business.
Really?
I went into a little side training that they had in the meeting that we were in. And I remember, because I forgot my notebook that night, and you said, hey, do you have anything to take notes with? Because it's really important that you get this. You were someone that was very serious about what you were doing. You took it as something that had extreme value. And I learned a whole lot in that particular little session that I had with you. But one thing that I learned and what I saw through the years up to this point is that it's very important to you that when you're dealing with people, whether it's financial or what you're just mentioning here, spiritually or whatever, it's very important to you that you're doing the best thing for people. You seem to have a heart for people, even though you said you're introvertish.
Very much.
Doing things correctly and helping people out, almost to the point, I mean, people have even teased you a little bit, because when you'll speak, I mean, the passion comes through. I mean, sometimes almost to the point of getting a little teared up a little bit. But that shows your sincerity. Where do you think that comes from? Has it always been that way, or is it more now with faith? Has that even increased it?
It's always been who I am. I'm pretty emotional in regards to my own story and situations. I do have a gifting of feeling people, and so I can feel pain, and I've asked questions that people don't know where the questions came from, and the touch in certain situations,
exactly. And
that's just, I just have to give it to God, because it's just spiritual led. I do have an idea that if it comes to mind, I'm an elephant in the room guy. I'll just call it out, and so I don't really hold much in or hold much back. And as far as doing things right, I learned a long time ago. It just saves you time to do it right the first time.
Yeah.
And learn it right the first time. And when you're dealing with somebody's future, I do take it really seriously, because I don't need to make it. I'm not going to be responsible for a mistake. All I can do is give them the information and hope that they put you in the best position to learn. And so I don't remember that, but I believe I would probably do that, and probably go and got you a pad of paper if you needed it or whatever it is.
Actually, I think you did.
Yeah. So I know you've got to take notes, because what passes through you sticks to you. So if you're watching podcasts, whether it's this one or any other one, I encourage you, always have stuff that it's not just, you're not going to remember any of it. You'll remember how maybe it made you feel, but you got to write stuff down, and then you have to take actions on the notes and stuff that you take. And so I'm a big advocate of if it comes into mind, I do it then if I can. If I can't do it then, I write it down and do it later. If I think of somebody, I just call them.
Yeah.
If I can, unless I'm in the middle of something and I can't. I don't worry about inconveniencing, because I'm happy to leave a message, or actually I don't leave a message. I do a missed call, and then I send a text, call me back when you can, or whatever it might be. But it's just doing things to a level, and now as a believer and what I've learned, and I work unto Him, I get up every morning unto Him. I'm excited. I'm a little strange here. When I wake up, my first thought typically is, hey, can I get up yet? I'm that excited to get started with my day, because my whole day is about serving and trying to help.
Okay.
And with our business, we've maintained an office through the pandemic and things like that. And I've been called a lot of things. A lot of people tease, we're old school. You need to go to an office. You can't work at home. And I'm like, I don't know. For me, I just get up and go.
Right.
And I am excited. I can only describe it as literal. If you've ever had that thing as a kid before Christmas, I literally, and I know it's hard for people to believe this, but every day is that way for me. Because it's just a matter of, one is I don't have a boss, I don't have a job.
Right.
And so I am my own boss. I have 168 hours a week, which all of you guys do. And I want to do everything I can. And so I don't run, I'm very scheduled, but I don't run a schedule. I do how I feel. If I'm tired, I'll go to bed early or whatever it is. But it's all about serving and just taking care of, I think that's why everybody's on earth, is to make a difference for one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that personal touch. So I did notice one of the things that you had just said about phone calls. That seems to be a lost art for a lot of people. It's text for most. I admit I'm guilty of that. So there's times I message you, I just expect a text back, and then all of a sudden there's a call. And I'll tell you, it's so surprising and so unusual that at first I'm looking like, what's he calling me for? It's just an answer, because I'm not used to that anymore, because most people just don't call. But it's good, though, because there's so much more that can be brought across from actual conversation, and I think that's a lost art. So that's important to you. One of the things as well is that I'm wondering this. I mean, in life, I'm sure there's been challenges. You even mentioned some in your intro. So how do you feel? Is there any particular challenges that you think have really shaped that person that you're saying you are now, as far as helping others?
Everybody has a preferred way of communicating. And so for me, I would rather communicate verbally, because there's tonality. There's a lot more than just the words and stuff that you type. So that's why I'm big on the phone. Everybody's perfectly made, and there's a reason why you are the way you are. And so I remember I had a business partner that was a nurse that worked with us, and she dealt with a lot of special needs kids at a school. And I remember I was working with her on her information, and it was the funniest thing, because she goes, and I don't know why it came up, but this was a shock to me. I had no idea. And you guys might, I don't know if you'll laugh or not, but you think it's interesting. But I remember she said, you're on the spectrum, right? And I'm like, and I didn't know what the spectrum was. Okay. And my wife does most of my research and things like that. So I said, well, what does that mean? And she goes, you're obviously high functioning, but you've got issues in regards to how you are and what you do. And I'm like, okay. It didn't stop us from doing business and helping and working with the family. And she goes, obviously you're perfect for what you do in business, and how you're utilizing that as a tool and as a gift. So I had to call my wife, and she's like, I don't know. So she sent me all these tests, like on the computer, asked these questions, that kind of stuff. And it turns out I'm really high spectrum. And it's funny, I have a new assistant that just started today, and I was going over with her how I am. Again, it's just you utilize your what can be considered a disability or a challenge, but there's a reason why you were made that way. Right. And we don't always understand it. We don't know why it's that way, but you are perfectly made. Right. And so my biggest issues I have were just insecurities I have, and probably why I don't read the text, or I don't do much on texting, is I'm a horrible speller, horrible reader. I remember when they first talked about doing business, I'm like, I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to take a test. I'm out of school. I'm done with college. I'm like, I'm never going to do any of that stuff again. And never say never. And
it seems that when you say never, God almost starts laughing.
It's pretty funny. Yeah. It's funny, because our lead pastor has recently made an announcement about stepping down, and he's talking about more of an online profile, where prior to that, when we're going through COVID and all the online stuff, he just completely hated it. Right. And like, people need to come to church. You got to get in with people, and that type of stuff. And then I kind of laugh because I'm coaching and mentoring with him, working with him on some things, vice versa. We're helping each other. And now he's looking at doing that, and I kind of reminded him of that conversation. And it's just funny. Don't ever exclude possibilities and chances, but you got to be open to opportunities when they're presented to you. And
absolutely. So, I would tell you that as I look back at a lot of things in my life, almost every major thing that God has done, at one point I said I would never do or didn't want to do.
It's almost like that's a trigger.
Yeah.
Really? I think God loves the challenge, and he's like, okay, well, guess what? That's your calling, that's your plan, and it's not usually what we think it is. Exactly. But there's hints through life. Right. There's things that have kind of opened up and shown you glimpses. I remember a book I read in that first Bible study when I was first coming to the Lord called Shape, S-H-A-P-E. I don't remember all the letters stood for, but I remember the author was Eric Rees, and it was about finding your heavenly purpose on earth. It's not purpose-driven lift, but it was like just clues, and it was every chapter just kind of built on, and it helped confirm the back thing, because I was still wondering if I was going to do this business or not.
Yeah.
And as I was going through that, it was so confirmational in regards to who I am, what I do, and I think every memory you have in life, everything that's ever happened to you, you do have a memory of it. Even it's not, and there's things that will recall those memories, and they're always there for you, and they've made you who you are, and it's just awesome when you figure out why you're here. I don't know if you'll ask at the end, what my end goals are and what I'm trying to do, but try to remember that one. But again, it's just, I'm excited. I love serving, but life is a vapor. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. So why put off to tomorrow what you can do today? If it's a phone call, then do that call. You may not get an opportunity tomorrow.
Exactly. Now, did you catch that? Hopefully you guys caught that one, because that one's big. Because for many years of my life, I would use the procrastinator's creed, I used to call it. Why do today what I can put off till tomorrow? But we do not know. You're right, from that biblical perspective. We do not know that we have tomorrow. We only know that we have today. And there's people that need to be impacted today.
And I don't know how many times I've been told, I can't believe you're calling me right now. Right? God's trying to use you, and you resist.
Right.
Right? It's like when people don't understand, well, I don't know how the Holy Spirit speaks to you. What does it sound like? And you can't describe it, but I would just say, for me, a lot of time, I think all the time, it's always the first voice. It's the first thing that speaks to you. It's the second voice that's not God that says, I'll do it tomorrow.
Right.
Or they're probably busy. Or this might not be a good time. I don't want to inconvenience. If it's an inconvenience, they won't answer.
Exactly.
Right? So no problem.
No, that's really good. That's really good. I've had a lot of times like that as well. So you mentioned that the Lord is now leading you. You've been doing training to go into some pastoral ministry. It's a little bit of a shift, although I know firsthand that it can balance and it can all work together. What caused you to follow? Because what I've told people through the years when they ask about being a pastor, I tell them, if you're not called to it, don't do it. Don't do it. So obviously you're feeling that call to it. So what are some things that have led you that way?
Well, we were doing they call it a pastor factory at our church, where we were trying to up and bring some people and see if they wanted to go through the system. And I remember the very first class was a perfect class, because it was don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. All the stuff, they went through all the negative stats of how many pastors quit, how many pastors commit suicide, how many pastors get divorced, how many pastors go through all of these things.
Right.
And why would you want to put yourself in that position? But that's where it started. For me, like I said,
so they didn't talk you out of it.
They didn't talk. And they didn't talk anybody out of it. Well, I appreciate transparency, and it's not. You need to have a calling for it. And if you think you're called for it, then I test drive it for a little while. And same thing if you're going to school and you think you have a profession, go intern if you don't, even if you don't get paid, go see if it's really what you want to do before you generate a bunch of loans and debt.
Sure.
But for me, I created our organization in 2014. Our organization is called the Life Builders.
Okay.
So helping people spiritually, physically, financially, relationally, intellectually, and I just want to serve. And so I ask God to put the people in front of me that I can work with, and I give them an opportunity to tell me no, or they're not interested, and it's okay. And most people are. People want to get better.
Yeah.
But we're always in a way. We're our worst enemies. We're our worst critics, and so I can't help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. But if they want to go through, and the best thing I kind of teach them is just, I'm not going to say life skills, but and again, I'm a little tough love. What are you going to do about it? If things continue to happen until you learn the lesson, and then when you learn the lesson, it won't happen anymore. So if you're going through situations that keep reoccurring, or you can't get out of it, okay, what do we need to do? I'm a big advocate of how do I do it versus I can't do it. Can't's a 4-letter word to me. Remove it out of your vocabulary. If I can't, I must. Right? Because all things are possible. You can do anything that you really want to do. I was doing an appointment this morning with a young lady, and she told me about something that she wanted, and I just said, if you really, the addicted drug user is going to get their fix every day, even if they don't work.
Right.
Because they need it or want it that bad.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want and need that bad? Right? Hopefully it's not drugs, but whatever it is, if it's to that level, you can get it. I've been fortunate in life to get anything and everything I've ever wanted. And that doesn't mean, oh, well, he's rich. No, it has nothing to do with that. I don't know if I'm not overly money motivated. You know that. I'm more about people. It doesn't mean we don't make money and we're fine. But I know if I set a goal, and we actually have a pretty good goal for next year that I would set, that that it's all things are possible. What do I have to do, or who do I have to become to hit it and get it?
Yeah.
Right. And then a lot of people set goals and they fall behind or they're not getting it. And so what they do is they dismiss the goal. Well, it wasn't meant to be, or whatever it is. It's like, no, I got to up the activity to still hit it. It's still there. Don't give up until it's over.
Right.
And then the other side of that is I'm not a big goal guy. What do you mean you're not a goal guy? It's like, I'm not asking my own question. It's like goal has a finish line, right? I believe progress is happiness. So where are you at spiritually, physically, financially, relationally, intellectually? And again, if progress is happiness, okay, well, you need to know where you're at to understand where you want to go, but it should never end. It should always continue, and you should always get better. There's no finish line to progress.
Now that reminds me of a question that I was asked a few years back when I was doing a talk somewhere, and I'm going to ask it to you then, because the person asked me. They said, you have these certain goals that you're trying to accomplish. When will it be to the point where you'll be able to sit back and say, I've done it? Okay? Now, I heard that question and I responded to them, I don't think it ever will be. Because as long as there's still another day, there's somebody else to help or something else to do. I sense that's where you are.
Well, a goal is set where you're at. I'm at a
Right.
certain weight, or I'm at a certain income, or I'm at a certain savings goal, or whatever it might be. And so I want to hit this by a certain day. You got to have a deadline.
Right.
But when I'm there, it's not like, okay, I'm there. Like, no. Well, what's the next thing? And so, right, where there's no vision, people perish.
Right.
When you lose hope, or you decide, you start becoming depressed. When you decide that you can't do anything, I get really frustrated with that, because you can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. So you just have to decide, just really, do you really want it? How bad do you want it? And that's what I have to do. When somebody doesn't hit something, I always come back to they really didn't want it. Because if you really wanted it, you'd do it.
And you bring up that verse, where there's no vision, people perish. And I did not realize, and probably till about a year ago, when I was looking at that verse, and there's the English translations, but what it really ties in the vision is it's revelation. Where there's no revelation, the people cast off restraint and they perish. Where does the revelation come from? It comes from God. So I think part of the problem that maybe you're saying with goals that I have as well is that sometimes they're ours, but God keeps shifting them, or he keeps moving them, and he keeps expanding them to things that we maybe weren't able to see when we first set it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, totally. I set goals every single day. I am very focused on, if you say you're going to take all day to clean your house, it's going to take you all day to clean the house.
Right.
But if you said, hey, I got to get the house cleaned in an hour, it's currently this time, I want to have it done by here, you can do that too.
Right.
And then you have the rest of the day to do other stuff. So it's just a matter of deciding and making an agreement. Everything in life is an agreement. We've agreed that a color is a certain color. But is it really, I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
Stay with what's most important. And that's an evolution that I've had. I used to get really focused on a lot of the small details versus what's the big picture. What's the big picture? Now, what I'm really good at is what are all the small details to get the big picture done.
Right.
And make that happen. So, absolutely.
All right, so we've mentioned the financial area, and that's an area that you have a good expertise in that God's using, and you're a person of faith as well. So now bringing that all in, I mean, we're in different times right now. A lot of people don't know exactly, what to do. Now, obviously, you're not going to tell them what to do and be held responsible completely, but what are some senses that you think, people, what are you teaching people right now that they should be very, smart about or paying attention to?
Get educated. So if you're going to invest in something, know what you're investing in. If you don't understand it, don't just do it because other people are doing it. I'm not really allowed to give any investment advice. I am a security registered rep, and we're not going to go there.
Right.
But I would just say that, knowledge is power, and applied knowledge is even more powerful. Opportunities coming. More money is made in down markets than up markets. Do your research on how that works.
Right.
And understand it's exciting times. And unfortunately, excitement and good news does not sell commercials.
Right.
And so the news is pretty much, I don't say turn off the news because you need to be current on what's going on with the world and events, but you need to listen to the news from their perspective. And it is purchased, it is bought, and it needs to sell commercials. And again, scariness gets people to watch.
Right.
When you have faith and understand the Lord, there's nothing to be scared. There's nothing to be scared about. I kind of do. I don't have a piece of paper handy. I should have brought a piece of paper. But if you have, think of a funnel, of a car funnel, right? Most people have the funnel, and it's upside down, the small end up top, and the big end on the bottom. And the small end is, okay, this is me, this is my life. And I work a job, and I got to pay my rent or my mortgage or my car payments. So I got to pay for my life. And then if I have anything left over there, I need to save some money. So I might have a retirement account or something like that. And then it's getting more and more rare when I talk to people about having anything going to a church or a charity or an organization. And the best way I can describe it is, and again, there's a lot of things we can talk about. The windows of heaven and opening up those doors is to turn the funnel around. Right, and we talk about paying yourself first, but to me, how I pay myself is to do my tithes and my offerings. So tithes, to me, is a 10% off the top of whatever comes in any areas. I've actually set up a separate account just to handle that. So I get it out of my account, put it out when I just send that money off.
Right.
Offering is over and above, and I kind of laugh at 10% because if you gave a 10% tip at the waiter or waitress, that's a bad tip.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, and what power do they have over your life compared to what God has?
Right.
And God can do more with your 10% than you can do with your 100%. And so if you can get that that idea that I want to do that, again, do your own research, do what's in your heart, and be a cheerful giver. You don't be resentful and that type of stuff. But I would say it's fun that this is an area in the Bible that says to challenge me. And you can say in my heart, God, I want to give $2,000 in December. Right. So for you to do that, it means you'd have to make $20,000, and I make an agreement with God to say, hey, this is my goal, another goal, right? And God put the people in front of me that I can serve, and I will be obedient. I will not, when it comes down to writing that check or doing the stuff, I don't second think it. I could do something more with this. I can do something here with it. Well, there's someplace else it should go, because that's offering. Tithing goes to hopefully you're connected with a church and an organization. A home church, that you do have a home church that's not at home, and you believe in them. And again, that's why when I went to the church, I had to interview the pastor.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't. I'm not going to. I'm pretty thrifty as far as that kind of stuff. I want to know where it's going. And now that I'm the administrator, we are completely transparent. If somebody does, and again, if somebody gives a quarter to 5 different things, 5 cents goes into each one, and I'll show them where exactly that happened. And so it's just a lot of fun. And then I've just seen God do. I'm careful on the word miracles, but miraculous things. And I've just heard story after story after people who have given how he gives back. And it's not always financially. It could be avoiding an accident. It could be a health situation that you get. I got COVID. We were supposed to do this 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And my wife had come back after a trip, and I told you, the test hasn't come in yet, but I said I wasn't going to do that to you or people around. And I think you even said, no, it'll be okay. And I'm like, no, because I care about people. And the last thing I'm going to do is have somebody get sick because of me, and have something happen. I couldn't live with that.
Sure.
So.
Now, you're only the second person that has told me what you told me in some of those things you just said. And that is, instead of looking, okay, what does God provide, and then I'll give 10%, the reverse, where you said, I want to be able to give this much, and in faith made a decision to do that, and then God filled in the
No,
rest.
it's an agreement.
An agreement.
I had to make the 20,000. I got to do to do it, but I'm
Right.
going to do what I'm. And he trusts in God. Does God trust you? He trusts me that I will do it. And so challenge me to write a $50,000 check. I'm ready for it.
Right.
Like let me do it.
So
I'm
it's like
excited
what we would call reverse engineering from the thought process of where most people are. I'll see what I get, and I'll do this.
He's my business partner.
Right.
He's my number one. My number one business partner is I'm in business with the Lord.
And this is a business partner who promises to bless and multiply your business and only asks for a requirement of a 10% cut, and then the rest is the offering.
Which most business partners wouldn't even do business with you for that.
Exactly. So that's the amazing thing about it, right?
Absolutely.
And yet, for many, it's like, oh, that's too much. And that's kind of crazy.
Well, or I don't know how to do it, and why would I give you more when you haven't handled what I've given you? Of course, we all have, you've been to church where they talk about the talents and the person that got 10 and 5 and or 3 or 2, whatever it was. But it's like the person that got 10, 100% return, doubled it. The person that got 5 did the same thing. They doubled it. So you did the same thing that 10 did. The one that got 1, and how easy would it have been to get 1, was scared and buried it and didn't do anything with it. And literally, you wicked servant, get away from me. It's like, wow. And it wouldn't have been that hard. And of course, talents relating to your own personal talents that you've been given. I know talents are a form of monetary functions in the Bible, but it's weird it happens to be called talents. And so what talents do you have as individuals that God has given you, and you're not even doing the 1% or just trying to get a little bit more out of it? You're burying those talents and hiding.
Right. And it's really hurting the person just as much, if not more, as robbing of the blessings, right? And
I believe we can disappoint God. I think God wants us. He wants the best for His children.
Yeah.
He's excited for us. He wants to give you gifts that you'll use and that you appreciate.
Yeah.
And can you imagine you give somebody a gift and you go over, and you probably all have done it, and you go over their house and they haven't even opened it or they never used it or whatever it is, and like you really maybe thought, and I give pretty thoughtful gifts. I think about what I want to do, and there's usually a meaning behind everything, and the last thing I want to do is have it not be used or appreciated. And so, with all these things, with much is given, much is expected. And, but you're not given more than you can handle. We all have heard that joke. Well, he really thinks a lot of me, that kind of stuff. But literally, progression is about handling more.
Yeah.
When you're younger, if you're in your finance and you're going through school and you get a little $100 problem, it's like the end of the world to you because you don't know where you're going to get it, right? Well, part of progression is dealing with $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 problems in the future. Those are good problems to have because you're growing. Yeah. You're becoming better. He's giving you more stuff, but I'm not going to give you more when you haven't done
with the small things. Right? Now you mentioned one other thing, which reminds me. You were talking about people in their planning, in their financial planning, considering the ministry, considering God's work, considering the church. I can think of one. I've had this several times through the years, but I think of one in particular many years ago, so nobody will attach to who I'm talking about, where this was a man that was faithful in the church here for 30, 40 years, served like crazy, but didn't think to include that part in his planning, right? So my assistant's going, and she keeps bringing this stuff, and she's bringing loads, and I'm like, what is this? And she's bringing like, oh yeah, well, the daughter's cleaning out the house, so these are some pans, and these are some different things we go through. And finally, after about 3 times of this, I'm like, you know what, stop.
Yeah, we're not Sanford and Sons.
Yeah, it's like
all this stuff
like this man did so much in this church. His memory is not going to be reduced to just his old junk that the daughter doesn't want.
Okay.
I don't want it, But so many have missed the opportunity. Maybe they just didn't have someone who was able to help them with that. To miss the opportunity to remember a ministry that they care about, and easily give it some type of a gift when they're gone. I mean, is that something that you try to?
Oh, absolutely. I've established many insurance policies where 10% of the beneficiary is their favorite church or their charity. In fact, if I know as I'm gathering information that they are tithers and that kind of stuff, it's your last tithe. And I've been, I work with people that have sold homes, and obviously this time a lot of people are selling their houses, that kind of stuff, where that's a pretty good check for 10%. You got to write and that kind of stuff, and I'm not a fundraiser.
Right.
It has nothing to do with it really has nothing to do with the church and their finances.
Yeah.
It's not about the church and the finance. It's about you.
Right.
And to me, it's a confidence that I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And there's a lot of stewardship that's involved with life. And so if you have talents and things you're supposed to do, but you're not taking care of your physical body, and I have a pretty good weight loss goal by the end of the year that it's a to do. It's going to get done. Okay. But it's because I realize I'm not, when there's opportunities for me to help with the church, sometimes physically, I'm not the guy they call.
Yeah.
And I'm actually upset by that. I know they're just trying to protect me and that kind of stuff and like that, but there was a day I was a lot more, and I actually would like to get back into bowling a lot more. I want to hit the senior tour and do some stuff. And
it's a very good bowler, by the way.
Yeah, I've had my moments. But, how can we serve him if we're not in good health, if we're not taking care of ourselves? Relationships, again, I think, sometimes people compartmentalize. They're a certain way at church, but they're different at work. And I'm going to go even a step further. They're different at the club, or they're different at the bar, or they're different out with friends and things like that. Right. I think it's important to have your identity be strong enough that wherever I go, I'm always the same.
The same person.
I don't need to be somebody different, or I don't need to not be somebody because I'm around this person.
Right.
Right. I want to be me. And so I think there's a lot of stuff to unpack there and how to do that. But again, it's about, spiritual, physical, financial, relational, intellectual. Intellectual is one of the big things. You can never out-earn your identity. It's important for us to grow ourselves, because if we can't give who we're not. And so the last couple of years, I go through the Bible every year. Right now I'm going through it in a chronological order, which is, I really encourage people to do it that way, because it puts a lot of the chapters together that you can see. And there's people that wrote, there's the same thing, like especially in the New Testament, that's talked about from 3 or 4 different people. Yeah. So you pull those chapters together, and when you listen to them back to back like that, or on the same day, it's like, well, it's a little bit different, but it's a different person telling a story.
Right.
But it's good to pull all that stuff together. I call it like putting Pulp Fiction in order. I did that too. I'm a little OCD on stuff. There's back to some of my issues.
Back to some issues. But you know what? People that have what you call spectrum or whatever like that are when it's channeled right, are some of the highest achieving people that there are. So you're right, that God gives a person it becomes a gift as far as contribution is concerned.
There is nobody on this earth that doesn't have a purpose and a reason for why they are who they are. Now, there is a person where I think we're supposed to become. We all have discernment. We all have the ability to speak, communicate in some way or fashion, and compared to any other animal on the planet.
Sure.
I mean, so we dominion, all that stuff, but we're supposed to, we got to figure it out, and that's the game.
Now, in business or in life, but I'd say in business, just like anything else, and I'm not going to be knocking anybody in particular, but let's face it, there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And whenever people are involved, there's some that are honest and there's some that are not. I would say that you're known, to me, and probably most people would agree, you're known as one of the good guys. One of the people, that can be trusted to always do the right thing all the time for people. Obviously, you're not perfect. None of us are. But that's your intention, and whenever possible, that's going to be the way that it is. How important, especially now as a person of faith, which you weren't always, but you are now, how important now does that become even more so to you?
When you realize he's always with you, it's a little scary. He's always watching. That's, wherever you are, he's everywhere. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it. How can, but again, it's just hard to understand how much power he has. I do everything unto him. So he, it's hard to think, well, does God know about investments and things like that? Yeah, I think he knows. He knows. But more importantly, he knows your heart.
Right.
And so I can't say that I've always done things perfectly. There's times I found out later that may not have been the right thing for the client, but based on what I knew at the time, it was the best information I had. And,
sure.
And I've learned a lot. Life is learning. The best lessons are when you make mistakes. So if you're afraid to make a mistake, stop it. Go ahead and make them, and you'll learn faster. But if somebody already has a product or service and it's taken care of and it's good, it's fine. And then I explain to them why it's good.
Yeah.
And I try to protect them in regards to if anybody comes and sits down with you and has something better, please invite me. I'd like to see what it is.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of appointments with clients that are not financial. I mean, I've done, I don't know how many solar appointments. Just doing the math, does it make sense or not sense to do it? I've done a lot of financial appointments in relations to, refining and mortgages and things like that. And I'm not in that industry. But just, does it make dollars, and more important, does it make sense?
Right.
And there are really good salespeople out there, and there's nothing wrong with the industry of sales. Everything is selling. I'm not against it, but I want to make sure people understand what they're doing. And so I come from very much an education approach. My wife tells me I'm slow to close because by the time we get to something, they're telling me they want it, or they've done their research and they're ready to do it. And okay, let me get it done for you.
Well, I've heard this said, I think you'd probably agree. People don't want to be sold, but they do want to buy.
They do want to buy. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They do want to buy. They just want to know that it's the right thing.
Well, and the other side of the coin is, if I get with somebody and I look at something, I don't slam or criticize anything because nobody wants to feel like they made a mistake either.
Right.
I don't like to make people feel bad, but I do give reality checks. And based on the information and what they were told, if it's just not right, well, let's just move on.
Right.
One of the hardest questions, and I thank you not really asking me. I didn't really know what for sure all the things you were going to ask, but I'm horrible in the rearview mirror. Like what happened yesterday, I really would have struggled telling you. Probably again one of my challenges. I am always only forward thinking, and where am I going tomorrow? What am I doing tomorrow? Where are things going?
Probably beneficial.
Where are we eating? Like I know that kind of stuff. That's the stuff I'm interested in is what's next. Regulation, some of that, you did send me a couple of things, and a lot of people that are pastors have a story, and that was one of the things I had to kind of process. I don't have a story. I've never used drugs. I've never, I used to have a few drinks here and there. My daughter once challenged me and said, you're an alcoholic, because she used to come over, and I built a bar out of a bowling lane in my house, and it was fully stocked, and we had people over, and I'm like, no, I'm not. And then she says, well, you couldn't give it up. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. And whatever. I said, how long? And she goes, a month. And it was like, okay, now what? I used to say I just like the taste. Now God is taking that away from me. So I don't know. I've never stolen anything. I've never, I have no criminal background. So it's amazing to me, and I don't know what your whole story is, but most pastors I meet, they became a pastor because they were in jail, or they had these challenges, and there's always a story behind it. And that was one of the questions I had to ask.
I don't have those.
Okay.
I don't have those.
Can I be a pastor and not have a story?
Yes.
I have a ministry in relations to the life builders, and I believe I'm led to make sure people aren't taken advantage of. I'm not a big advocate of the financial services industry because I don't like what they do to people. It's mostly transactions. It's not relations. And, I'm a relationship type person. And
I totally get you. I come from the same direction.
Yeah.
So now let's look at this. Okay, obviously the financial industry is part of who you are. The ministry, other part of the ministry is it's all ministry really, when you think about it, everything that we're doing, when we look at it through that lens. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you kind of a strange question.
Okay.
You said you're forward thinking. All right, so this is forward thinking. Some people would call it 3 wishes, but we're not rubbing a lamp for a genie here.
You told me about this one.
Right.
This is a hard question.
Right. So let's just say a spiritual bucket list. If you could choose. Obviously, God may change it. But maybe you already know because of a sense of some desires that God has put in your heart to see happen.
Yeah.
Okay? What would some of those 2 or 3 things?
As far as, I have no doubt that there will be a Life Builder Church someday. It's part of, in my opinion, a retirement plan, which will not be in California. I don't know where for sure it's going to be. We're looking at some places and some ideas. But that's, I see myself always in ministry and serving and helping people to the day I die, and I hope I don't die for a lot of days. My grandmother lived to 104, so
Nice.
I'm banking on her longevity.
There you go.
Both my parents passed in their 60s, but they passed through cancer and things that are non-hereditary supposedly, but keep an eye out. But I don't have their habits. I don't have any of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I'm not. And by the way, we attract things that we think about, and I don't even really think much about it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not really worried about that. But I do pray that God would use me to have a ministry someday where I would have a home church that would be my church, and it would clearly have the Life Builder logo out there, and it's still helping people spiritually, physically, financially, relationally, intellectually.
Sure.
Number two, I would probably, if I had a wish, is just there's a peace that the Lord gives you, and I can't explain it to people that. I mean, we have people, that I'm assuming most people that are watching your show are probably believers. But if you still have fear and doubt, fear and faith cannot coexist. If you still worry about anything, I literally worry about nothing, because why would I? He's got it. Now it doesn't mean there's not challenges. It doesn't mean you can't have issues and things like that. But again, he's not going to give me something that's not serving him. Right. And if it requires something to get sick or something to happen, we don't understand why. We don't know why you're going through it. But I just have to know that I know, without a shadow of a doubt, it's his, and it can be he can take a covering away from you and allow the enemy to get out there. I think one thing I learned a long time ago that I think is a revelation. When I learned it, I thought it was. I've talked to some pastors about it. They're not as impressed as I was about it. But I'm like, not all good things come from God. Mm-hmm. The devil can give you things that will distract you and tempt you and put you in different situations and places. And what I do know is the more connected you are, the more challenges you're going to face. You become much more attacked. And you always have to keep your guard up. You're always under attack. The enemy wants to take you out, especially the more good you're doing. And you have to be aware of that. And so you have to keep your shield up and your armor up and be aware and don't put yourself in compromising situations and places. And, and again, if you don't compartmentalize, if you're always who you are and always that believer and that kind of stuff, if you are at a bar, at a club, you're not going to get filmed having some girl on your lap. It's just not going to happen. Right. You know what I mean? It's just they let themselves down, and that creates a whole thing now. And I don't even know who the coach was, but I saw something on the news, and it's just like, it's like, and I just see it. It's just like the enemy uses that stuff. Right. He's looking for a weakness.
Now, if you didn't catch that, I'm going to make sure you caught that, because he just dropped you something really good out there. And that's that the enemy doesn't always attack by attacking. Sometimes he's tricky, and he'll attack and distract you by making you comfortable and allowing you to think that everything's fine and not going where God wants to tell you. He's very tricky, he's very subtle, so he doesn't always work the same way. So that's a big one that some people may not catch. Yeah. No. All right, so that was good. Last question, we'll go with this one. Okay. You've had times in your life, obviously, where even though you had a sense of belief, you had times in your life where you were not really a person of faith. You said God grabbed hold of you later. So you've lived both ways. All right?
I've always wanted it, though.
You've always wanted it, so there was always that sense there that God was calling. It took a certain time.
I remember I can't tell a lie. I said I've never stolen anything. I remember once I stole a Bible from a hotel. Because this was when I was a kid. I wanted to read it. Yeah. But as I mentioned, I have a hard time reading. Better now. And again, if you have challenges, it doesn't mean you should not do it. It's more work, and that's one of the reasons why I do this. I do a call on Sunday nights, and I got to prepare, and it's a book thing, and I go through, and again, so I'm getting better. You can't ignore your weaknesses, but you want to play to your strengths. Right. If God's already given you a strength, you can become amazing. That's what you're supposed to be doing. I was always. I remember, getting on my knees in the Lord's Prayer. Mm-hmm. Going to bed. Yeah. Seeing it on some commercial or, TV and I remember praying. I never really understood kind of hearing back. My grandmother was a church person, but she didn't take me to anything. I think there was like a Christmas thing and they had a camel, and I thought that was cool or whatever, kind of going through. I was invited to some things that were events, whether it was, something, and I wasn't, again, the introvert thing kicked in, so I'm not comfortable being around people I don't know, and so I think I avoided a lot of things, but I always knew something. And I know I've always had somebody protecting me.
Watching over you.
Yeah.
So then the time finally came where you realized what you were looking for. So to the person out there that's still searching, the person out there that maybe they have that sense like you had, but they just don't know. What do you want to, or maybe they feel like they're all alone in this world, and there's not, the God that's watching over them. Because it means so much to you, this is your chance. What do you want to tell them?
You have to ask God to put the person in your life that you can receive it from. And so, as I mentioned, this gentleman came in, and he was part of our organization, and I remember meeting him, and we used to have little mixers and stuff we did, and he invited, and then he knew enough to invite me to a church, and that was at a hotel, and it was non-committal, it wasn't overbearing, and
Right.
It was just the right person at the right time. And then I said yes, and we went, and it wasn't bad, and then he had a men's group, and I met some of the guys at the church, and so I started going to the men's group, and I met some more people, and just let God, it doesn't have to be a lightning bolt instant,
Sure.
but if it's something you're looking for, ask God to reveal it, and let him put the people in your life that you should, that you're comfortable. And then you got to be able to talk to them. And the men's group was very open, and I heard a lot of different conversations, and I felt safe. We're not going to be ridiculed. No, fire and brimstone, nothing like this.
Sure.
And all different types of people, and all different spots and places in their walk. And I've met people that have been believers. So they tell me for their whole life or 30 years and that kind of stuff. But I watched their walk, and I'm like, it's not walking.
Right.
You got to walk it out. And so again, taking notes and applying and environment is stronger than will. And if you think you can get this online on a podcast, no, you got to get into the environment. You got to control your environment, what goes in, what you're hearing, your associations. Get around the people that are there to support you and help you in that area, right? So find somebody that you can call your spiritual father, right? And I'm older than Jared, who you'll meet someday, but he was my leader in that area, and if you want to get better physically, then get around people that are in better physical shape than you are, and get uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm sure you guys have heard that before, but if you stay in your comfort zone, nothing grows, nothing happens.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Well, Dean, thank you so much. I appreciate you
Time
coming.
flew by, at least for me. I don't know if it did for you guys, but
It did, and I know that it's going to be a blessing to those who are hearing, and it's going to be an encouragement. Feel free to reach out. We'll try to put your contact information connected to the
Instagram, Life Builder Dean.
There you go, Life Builder Dean. You heard it. There's a
is.
way to reach him. Like I said, he is one of the good guys. I do believe that wholeheartedly, or I wouldn't even have him on here. And we encourage you to watch all the podcast episodes, subscribe, especially if you're on the YouTube channel, because God's doing a lot of great things in many people's different lives. But also at the same time, I want to encourage you what Dean just said. Don't just rely on podcasts and things that are online. Get connected with people in a good church or good believers that are out there that are going to be able to encourage you, that are going to be able to help you, that are going to have fellowship with you. It's very important, and God calls us to do that. So thank you again for watching. This has been the Audacious Faith Podcast. God bless you.